Hello, teacher family. I'm Jane Considine. Thanks for being back here. Isn't this adorable? Last night, well, this is session 2. I didn't really kind of do any of who I am and what I am and all of that. And it's probably important I do a little bit about that. I know I've earned my teaching stripes with many of you and have taught in your schools, but it is worth saying that essentially I'm a primary teacher through and through. And since the year 2000, I've worked in schools, mainly in the UK, but around the world as well, with their English curriculums. And in that regard, reading and writing has been my specialism. I really do care about reading and writing. And these sessions, the Right Stuff sessions, they're a menu of 10 bite-sized chunks of CPD for you guys, probably a little bit for me as well, to keep our brains whirring, and actually so that we can feel connected with each other and have kind of a common meeting point to discuss and explore writing further. Now, the intent of them isn't necessarily to be mind-blowing. A lot of the things I'll be talking about you'll have heard about before, but it's a chance to sharpen our thinking. You can watch now and live in your slippers with your strawberry laces, Miss Mills. I hope you're sharing those e-numbers. And essentially, you can watch down the line. So if you miss one, it doesn't matter. However, what does matter, in my mind, is they are an interconnected kind of jigsawing of thinking. So I do want you to experience all of them and join that thinking together. And they'll have that sort of what do I do that? Start words I can't say. I'm trying to say cumulative sense of building knowledge, essentially. I've got my favourite jumper on. I haven't got my slippers on today, but it's all soft and cash. And that is also important to say as well. These little soirees in the evening are supposed to feel very grown up, very informal. You're allowed one joke on the live chat. Ian, my husband, is moderating that. He's not as funny as I am, so I'm sorry about that. But he's also going to be the voice of hitting me up with questions. And what I'm going to try and do is answer them as honestly as I can. And I'll explore as many of them during these sessions, which is really important. So before we get going, just a couple of other things I wanted to say is these are intended to be informative. And the other thing is who they're not for. They're not actually for parents. They're for teachers. And that is really important because as these unravel, we'll be using chunks of jargon and kind of inside language that we use that we've got a tendency to do in teaching. So they're just for our teacher family, and that's crucial. But it's nice to know that we're all gathering here. And something else. I had this kind of big promise of prizes, and then I gave no prizes out. So that was a little bit a miss of me. But I do want to give a prize now to somebody who was listening yesterday, and mainly their advice to me yesterday, which I thought was so damn honest. They deserve a prize. And I've written her name down. Her name is Nera Visque from Spain, and she basically said, sort your lighting out and take your glasses off. Now, we're at home here. We're not very techy, and I'm sure there's lots of things we're doing really badly. So I've took my glasses off. which might unravel because I won't be able to read any of my notes. Thank you for my note love I've been having from people, but the biggest big up has to go to, and I've lost you in the midst of tweets, but the person who accessed this CPD in the bath. Like, go you, whoever you are, if you're there tonight, you know, and you're doing it again, brilliant. Okay, the prizes. If you get a prize, points make prizes. I'll send you a Right Stuff book and a Hooked on Books book. So these are jetting their way to Spain for Nera. Okay.
Can she email us her address?
Oh yeah, can you email us address? So it's all kind of highly unslick and not very techy here. Right, we've done all of that. What I want to do now is get to the nitty gritty, and we're on session 2, and you know it's called the 3 zones of writing. Now, what I'm going to do within this session is talk very closely about 4 aspects to do with the 3 zones of writing. It's a tricky session because it's a precursor, it's kind of an overview, it's almost like the zoom out of the subsequent sessions 3, 4 and 5, where we kind of zoom in and go into each zone in more detail. So kind of hold that in your mind as the suite of sessions unravel, because there'll be more meat on the bones down the line. Okay. Right. This is not rehearsed, as you can see. I've got my notes to lean on, and there'll be things that I need to look up and check out and think about, and we're going to try and make it as real as possible. Okay. First of all, what I want to talk about is the 3 zones of writing. Now, we've probably, unless you've been under the wing of Right Stuff training before, you might not have heard about what the 3 zones of writing are and what they're about. And I'm going to now pin up a poster because I want to show you this rainbow that I refer to as the writing rainbow. Now, if you want to get hold of your own poster, you can do. It is available on the Training Space website. I'm just going to write that website up there, www.thetrainingspace.co.uk. And this is this understanding that when we are teaching children to write, one of the things I notice when I work in schools where they've, for want of a better word, lost their way or hit the skids, or the pressure's on, or they might be in a category. Not always, and schools that hit the skids aren't necessarily in a category. When you talk very closely about what isn't working with their English curriculum or where things might have gone awry, it seems to be rooted in this idea of the pressure's on. You know, that's teaching, isn't it? The pressure's on, the job list keeps coming, the government keeps changing, the goalposts keep moving. I know what we need to do is almost simplify things. We need to almost simplify the curriculum, and sometimes what that manifests itself in something like English is kind of setting up this sense of having some non-negotiables. You know, like, well, look, if you just do capital letters and full stops, and then I'll do this, and it's almost like, can we get rid of stuff and make it simpler because we're about to implode? And I can genuinely empathise with why schools sort of go for that strategy. But ultimately, it will unravel, because what we feel personally as a teacher is There is so much to do. There is such a wealth, an enormity of wealth of knowledge and expertise that these kids need to be able to be writers, that we feel at odds with, like a curriculum decision like that, and everything a child needs to excel. So my advice is, when we want to be a school that is excellent at teaching writing, what we actually have to do is embrace the enormity of it and recognise, God, there's so much to do, and actually in that knowing, we're all going to know what it is. And even more than that, we're going to have very high expectations around it. Now, when there is so much to do, what we need is almost like clarity of a schema. And what I like to call these sort of modes is it's almost like a mind frame. And if you look here, what you can see here is almost like a mind frame for thinking about writing that has compartments, so that when we are teaching particular lenses of writing, kids can meet these and get more and more examples and more practice of these lenses. So there is more and more explicit clarity around how they can excel at, for example, writing a simile. So this sort of conceptual frame is really important, because what it means is when kids are being taught writing, they keep coming back to this filing system and become more and more knowledgeable around it. And this sort of almost sense of having knowledge and information and filing it into these categories means that within those categories, kids can become very confident and adept. Now, when I talk about the 3 zones of writing, this rainbow has 3 tiers to it. And I'm going to give you a broad overview of this. Now, that top tier up here, that top tier is all about the ideas of writing. And in a moment, I'm going to explain exactly what I mean. So this is all about the ideas of writing. And this is where children are making imaginative choices about the content of the things they're going to include. And I'll talk about that in a moment. This second tier of on the rainbow here is all about the grammar of writing. And this tier has been designed to cover everything in the primary national curriculum from year 1 to year 6. And then some, probably. So everything's covered there on that grammar tier. The grammar of writing. And this third tier down at the bottom, this is all about the techniques of writing. Things like alliteration, repetition for effect, simile. And this is one of the crucial ways that we can enhance our modelling and our examples and our scaffolds and essentially our teaching, because we can show kids where we are on this frame for thinking about all the aspects of writing. And that is really powerful. It's almost as beautiful as the periodic table in chemistry. And it means things, not just to teachers, and it can prop us up when the stress is on. It means things to children because, they don't have to be good at it all at once, but they can begin to build their expertise, you know, at any one time, and then over time become good within the ideas of writing, the grammar of writing, and the techniques of writing. So, and then within this writing rainbow, and I think this is important to say because of everything we know about thinking and cueing kids thinking and you know, dual coding, every one of these compartments, you know, has a symbol to represent what we're trying to achieve. Now, so that's kind of that big view, that sort of making concrete the full expectations of what we're trying to do in writing, what we're trying to do in writing from year 1 all the way up to year 6 across non-fiction and story. Okay. What I'm going to do now is I am going to zoom into the ideas of writing firstly. So I'm just going to take this poster away, and I just want to add, actually, probably before I fling that down, I don't know if I get cross with myself and I jump the gun. What I haven't pointed your eye to, which is worth noting actually, the ideas of writing here, these are called the fantastics. And the fantastics is almost like an acrostic for kids to remember it, but the fantastics represent the ideas of writing. I want to talk about those in a little bit more detail because I don't want you to think it's just a cheesy acrostic for its own sake. It really isn't, and I want to explore that in a moment. Now, the grammar for writing on that here are called the grammaristics. And the reason actually why the techniques of writing are called the boomtastics is because that is that moment, and we've all taught kids, you know, when they begin to recognise, you know, when they write crash on a page in capital letters, they start to realise it's their techniques that it's enabling them, their writing to explode off the page, you know, and connect with the reader. They're almost at that moment recognising actually the fundamental job of a writer to have an impact on a reader down the line. Now, having this mind frame, this kind of concrete way that we can file, refile, and of course we know knowledge needs to be connected to knowledge, and this will really help children's learning because they can then build links, joins and connections. I am now going to dip in for a moment into the 9 ideas for writing. Now, that's the top tier. Okay.
Did you want to stop for any questions or anything?
Go on then, Ian. Hit me up with a question.
Okay.
If there's, well, I'll pin these up. That's a good point, actually. Tell me what people are saying.
So there's been a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Somebody asked, can it be used, the same poster, in all year groups?
Yeah. That's that question there was, can it be used, that poster, in all year groups? Yes. My work for years, since the year 2000, on almost, I suppose, what you'd call the standards agenda to do with teaching and learning. If there's one thing I've learned from that work is that we need consistency, and we need consistent approaches that are based on research and evidence. And the wonderful thing about the Writing Rainbow is once we've all got it, it's enough of a structure to hold us up. But as a teacher, then we can still work under it, you know, to play to our own personal strengths, our flair, to make it come alive with curriculum interests, books, texts, films. You know, that can be, you know, that then can live and breathe, you know, the art of teaching. But we've got this kind of enough of a structure that we can all dance under it. Ian, any other questions?
Yeah, sorry. there's a really good one.
Can you speak up a bit?
Yeah, you're going to have to repeat what I say.
Oh, go on then, nice and loud. Good
Right,
boy. I
okay,
might give you one of Mrs. Mill's strawberry laces if you're a good boy.
Right, it says here, sorry. Just
Too slow.
Is the right stuff
Oh.
a scheme? No, listen. Is
Go
the
on.
right stuff a scheme?
Yeah.
Uh,
Right, okay, that's a good question. Is the right stuff a scheme? No. The right stuff is it's an approach. It's not a scheme. You can pick up the Writing Rainbow and apply it to any book, picture book, novel, any film. It's a way of thinking about how we want teaching and learning to come to life in the classroom. You know, it's got at the heart of it teaching and learning principles that are evidence-based. Okay, back over here, the Fantastics. Right, now, I don't say this lightly, and I really mean this. The Fantastics are the maths of writing. And they're not just, oh, look, this is a nice way to think about writing ideas. They are more fundamental than that. And I don't say this lightly either. It really doesn't matter if you're J.K. Rowling, Michael Morpurgo, Julia Donaldson. At the point of writing, it doesn't matter how clever you are. It doesn't matter if you're writing War and Peace or Gruffalo. And even, writers who are, what's the word? Multi-millionaires. Words escape me. But bestsellers, thank you. They probably don't even know they're doing this because they'll be doing it instinctively. But this is our job as teachers to kind of extrapolate those sort of instinctive stuff to make them visible and obvious. At the point of writing, you have 9 choices. And that's why I call that the maths of writing. There are no more than 9, and there are no less than 9. So at the point of writing, and this is what is worth saying, what is locked in the Fantastics? Well, I'll tell you what, let's state the obvious. What's locked in the Fantastics are the 5 senses. So that is the sense of sight, the sense of touch, the sense of smell, the sense of taste, and hearing, the sense of sound. So those are part of a writer's toolkit of how they can bring to the reader any event or any experience. So they're the 5 senses. And let me tell you, if you've been working in Key Stage 1, you've been doing that stuff for donkey's years. However, there's also another 4 lenses, and they are feelings, action, speech, and inner thought. And that compendium of 9 is critical for children to know, because what happens to us in the classroom is essentially this. Miss, I don't know what to do. And when kids say they don't know what to do, we think, they haven't been listening. Well, invariably they have been listening, and they don't actually mean do. What they mean is, I don't know what to write. If children aren't reading regularly and have caught the reading bug, writing is one of the biggest challenges they have at school. But one of the ways we can begin to craft their thinking about writing is talk very explicitly about, well, actually, kids, at the point of writing, you can put the spotlight on one of these lenses, and these lenses are the 9 ideas for writing. So you could write me a sentence about how the character feels, or what the character does, or what the character says. This is really crucial. And of course, the symbols mean it's highly accessible. And for us as a teacher then, when we talk about trying not to fall into the trap of being a closed procedure teacher, it's like, oh, can you just replace that adverb, at the end of modelling, and you might underline it. We can now take them under the bigger wings of teaching and show them, look, I'm going to build a sound sentence, and I can show them, how to build a sound sentence. And they can have a go at building a sound sentence. And mine might have 16 words and theirs might have 14 words. But now we're asking them to write through a certain lens. And that is really important. What this also means is it's that interplay with reading, of course. Because what this means as well, in reading teaching, we can pick up any book and we can go, whoa, look here, chapter 2 of Vicky Angel by Jacqueline Wilson, there's a car crash. Look at the end of chapter 2, at the car crash. Look, we've got an action sentence, a sound sentence, a feeling, a dialogue, an action, a sound, the car crash. We can analyse that. We've spoke for donkey's years about, reading like a writer, reading with a writerly eye, but we've never had the bridge, the actual concrete bridge to talk about it. So this is a really powerful way to work with children to explore the ideas of writing and how some chapters in some books, have a lean on, if it's night, you suddenly realise, actually, look at how clever this author is. It's night. So we are having a lot more small sounds but made loud. We're having, a lot more inner thoughts. We're having a lot more feeling sentences. You can begin to notice trends and the lenses that writers lean on, and of course our best-selling writers dance these range beautifully. So these are a game changer in my mind, and what the national curriculum hasn't ever given us as a teacher is this sort of recognition of that actually for kids to be excellent at as writers rather, we need to help them live experiences, whether they're real, like, oh look, we're going out to the Space Centre in Leicester, or they're imagined, we're going to go on a rocket to the moon, that we can actually live experiences and gather through these lenses. What did we see? What did we touch? I know we go on a senses walk in the woods, but why leave the other 4 behind? Because what did you do? What did you think? What did you feel? What did you say? They to me have been the missing part that we've needed in an English curriculum to really put value at the heart of children's writing ideas. I love the Fantastics. And I think for me as a teacher, this is so much more than, let's just gather some ideas. There are only 9, no more than 9, no less than 9. And that makes this such a supportive way to enhance and develop the breadth of children's writing. Okay. That tomorrow, we're going to get even more excited about those. Session 3 is going to be the fantastics in all its forms, what it means for a curriculum, what it means for modelling, you know, echoes into reading, how it can then go support back into writing. That is tomorrow. So we're going to do more of that tomorrow. But I just want to give you the broad overview.
Did you want any questions?
Go on then, hit me up with a question, Ian.
Okay. Apparently people can hear me. So,
Vodka. It's not straight.
people have been asking about your jumper, so I've told them where to get it. Which
Cool.
And I've also said that we'll give it out as tomorrow's prize.
Sweaty, do it.
Yeah, okay. Right, so does the white stuff have to be used as a school scheme, or could I use it on my own in year 5, 6? We do not have a scheme for literacy.
Yeah, use it in your own room. Yeah, it's great if everyone can get involved in the school. You can just go for it yourself. Yeah, fine, all good. Right, I'm now going to give you, not in a lot of detail, because remember, this is going to be session 4. I just want to talk about a few aspects on the second zone of writing, you know, grammar for writing. And in particular, again, when we talk about the grammar of writing, I've already said that tier covers everything in the national curriculum. And, you know, I know why the government did it, particularly for primary. They kind of handed stuff out for people to do. Right, well, you have determiners, all right, you know, you have adverbial phrases. Woo, you have, and they gave us stuff. But, you know, when you look at the research about grammar, and somebody rep for Deborah Myhill earlier on Twitter, and I really vouch for Deborah's work in grammar, who has given us and coined the phrase grammar in context for us all. Not only does it need to be in context, it's not even narrow. Narrow's not quite the wrong word, but it's too deconstructed to say you do that. You know, for grammar teaching to work, we've got to have more expertise across a wider remit. And rather than do our list, we've got to understand grammar in its broader sense. You know, the bigger stuff of grammar, like short sentences, long sentences, you know, the rhythm of writing, you know. And I know we have references to simple, compound and complex, but it's almost like they should be all of ours. And you know, this wider remit, because that makes us better teachers, and actually it makes children's learning more vital, because that, you know, we're going for the big stuff. You know, we've got to go almost beyond the national curriculum when we teach grammar. And in session 4 we're going to do a detailed look at grammar, actually, the grammar of writing. But this is the sort of thing on the grammar zone, and I just want to show you some of the symbols and how they can support children, they can support us as we're modelling. So these are 3 that I've just chosen from that grammar tier. Now, this symbol here represents adverbs and adverbial phrases. And really, for me, the symbol hints at the 3 different components. So we've got a clock on here, which tells me that this chunk is all about phrases to do with when things happened, when they happened. So things like, you know, later that day at 2 o'clock, that sort of thing. This little shorthand here, I look at that, and that can remind me, like, quickly, slowly, how things happened. But we get really obsessed with the ly how, and there's more than the ly how, with great trepidation. It's not just excitedly, happily. And then this sort of green arrow, almost like a geography green, can tell us where things happened. But actually, the fact we have an arrow, the most interesting thing for me about this lens is we've gone a bit crazy for frontedness, fronted adverbials. And for me, the most interesting thing about them is they move about. They're very mobile within clauses. So that sentence we had yesterday from the Whitby Witches, Rachel sighed, what we can do with something really simple like that, a subject and a verb sentence, we can add in when she sighed, how she sighed, where she sighed. Rachel sighed quietly during rush hour on the pavement. But all of those chunks can move about. On the pavement, Rachel sighed quietly during rush hour. During rush hour, Rachel sighed quietly, and highly mobile, all those chunks. And that is really interesting. And we're going to talk more about grammar down the line. This is my favourite lens on the grammar tier, and it's to do with, actually let me just put that little label there, that's all to do with adverbs, adverbial phrases. This is to do with sentence structure. And we talked yesterday about vouching for the best authors, and that we can lean on sentences from the best authors in two ways. Way one, thank you for that really interesting structure. Prudence, comma, meanwhile, comma, who was skipping across the lawn. Also, quite complicated, so we could borrow character name, meanwhile, we can look at a sentence for its structure. Or that other thing where we can look at a sentence, it can be a gift because of vocabulary, beguiling butterflies. Wow, that's interesting. Actually, what springs to mind is the Disney film we were working on in Super Sentence Stackers, Paperman. I love that film. And actually, we worked with this structure, and it was the lady in the Meg in the film who hypnotises George with her looks and her red lipstick. And we had a sentence like this, something like this anyway. Her lips were as red as strawberries, but actually the structure we were borrowing and stealing was this idea as once you've landed your simile, you then put in a colon and then a list of descriptive words. I mean, we had to be a bit careful. It got a bit raunchy, didn't it, Ian? Because we had juicy, delicious, delectable, and then we had to pull it back to certificate U. But that idea of that structure, that list after a colon, that is something that we can teach kids. Don't draw a box around it. What have I done there? Daft twat. That's an internal monologue to myself, by the way. Right. Like the people who are on Swear Watch. Right. And then something like punctuation. I mean, this is interesting for punctuation as well. But these aspects, why these are crucial is that rather than jumping into modelled writing or demonstration writing, and this is what I see a lot, kids, you say to kids, what's your teacher doing now? You know, when a teacher's modelling, they say things like, oh, this is where they pretend they're not very good at spelling, but they are, miss, because it's written on their hand. Or you say, well, actually, what do you think your teacher's doing now? I don't know. I'm not completely convinced kids always know what they're watching when it's demonstration writing. So what is really crucial at the point of doing demonstration writing, we need to say, look here at me showing you the writer's brain. Look here as I talk out loud what the thinking process is. But as you watch as a kid, I am tuning your thinking in with a symbol and with kind of a directed sense of what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do now, kids, is build a rhetorical question to the reader. And I'm going to use a question mark. And I'm going to start this question. It's going to start with how. And I want you to watch how I use the word how, and I wish I hadn't have used the word how now myself, and how I do that, and use a question mark so that kids can see where you're trying to drive it. And then they have this bigger filing cabinet of thinking that when Miss works with writing, she's either going to give me a demo about the ideas of writing, or she's going to do a demonstration about the grammar of writing, or, and this moves us neatly onto the third zone, which is about the techniques of writing. Now, if we're going to be straight, what would the national curriculum just have us model? Well, actually, just sentences where we showcase grammar. And that isn't wide enough. That isn't big enough. You know, we've got to go beyond the national curriculum. And of course, we'll do all the tricky grammar stuff. You can count on us, we'll do that. But we've got to get to the imaginative stuff, the ideas of writing. And we've also got to get to the techniques of writing. So in session 5, we're going to do the techniques in detail. But the sort of things I mean by the techniques of writing, they're things like here, this symbol, all about alliteration. And within this, we want kids to understand it's like same sound at the beginning, but more than that, it's things like assonance. You know, that dominant sound of S, not just in the beginning, all over. So, you know, then we can begin to say, look, I want you to see through my demonstration, you know, swans, and then slid softly. These things would be better if I planned them, wouldn't they? But you get me drift. Simile, I love this symbol, you know, it's got an equal sign on it. You know, the teacher is like a witch. You know, this symbol, metaphor, the teacher is a witch. You know, I get the most amount of emails about this symbol, and I hope you can see that there. It's, you can read it either way. And it captures a metaphor. The birds are umbrellas. The umbrellas are birds. But have I got a big one behind me?
Yeah, behind the board.
Brilliant. And again, this one here, pathetic fallacy. Kids really love that, where we can push emotions into the weather and nature. And kids get that because that's their Disney and Pixar films. You know, when Frozen 2, Elsa is angry, lightning in the sky, you know, that sort of thing. Kids get that. Okay, what we're going to do about the fantastics is we're going to meet and talk about them more tomorrow. The grammar of writing, we're going to do that on session 4. And the techniques of writing, we're going to do that in a lot of detail on session 5. However, what I want to talk about now is beginning to tie some of the thinking together. Some of the thinking which I call kind of principles to teach English, and some of the that mind frame structure that can prop us up. Now, what is really worth saying at this point, and if you know me, you'll know that I cannot shut up about this. It is so important to me, and I think it's very easy to get distracted with this in the classroom. And it's basically this point. All of us as a profession are worrying about words. And it is right to worry about words. We're worried about the vocabulary kids have got. We're worrying about the kids who don't have enough vocabulary when they come to us in school. We know about, poverty in vocabulary and the catch up. And we also know data that links to kids who have got more words down the line are going to have more success in life. And, essentially reading will bolster and widen their vocabulary. Now, so words are essential. However, a lot of teaching can lose its way because we can fall sometimes either side of what would be the most effective place to work with children's working memory. And it's basically this. Sometimes, because we're so worried about words and the lack of vocabulary, our lessons can feel like words, words, words. Let's collect words. Have we got words? Yes, we've got words. And we kind of don't finish the job. We don't mobilise those words into sentences. And sometimes, because the pressure's on and we're worrying about independent writing and there's so much to do, we've got to get it down, we've got to get this portfolio. Sometimes our chunks are too big. We're going for paragraphs or conclusions or middles. Too much. To get the pitch absolutely perfect for kids' working memory with what they can take on, when we teach writing, we've got to trade in the commodity of sentences. And the reason why we've got to work with sentences mostly is because they are a chunk of sense. And this is really crucial, that's kind of where we put our pitch in the teaching and learning of writing. And now we know that, the other important thing to say, once you start working in sentences, what then happens naturally, because you're working in chunks of sense, is that context is king. Everything then is about the language of that moment in real time for that sentence. So that is critical because that links back to what I was talking about yesterday, that we don't want to send kids off on almost like word dictionary tasks and going to find stuff that don't ultimately mobilise back. And I want to put the word quickly there as well, urgently, into a sentence of the moment. So the key to teaching vocabulary is right there. Just right there when it's being crafted and constructed. And we are going to talk about that in a lot more detail. One of the things we get really excited about and it started actually in the early years, but I realise it's not just for the early years, it's for everybody, this sort of idea of word collector. And we've got to help kids find language quickly in the moment. And so, for example, let's say I want to write a sentence about the moon, and the children know I want to write a sentence about the moon. And I want to write a sentence about what the moon looks like. And I'm going to drop an adjective just before that. I'm going to write a sentence, kids, about the moon, what it looks like. I'm going to start with the determiner the, and I'm going to put my appearance adjective here, and then the moon. Now, this is where I might play a game called word catcher with the kids. So I might say to the kids, right, there are 7 words to collect here. How many can you collect? Show me how many you can collect. Are you ready? So under the stars that night, there was a magnificent moon, a wondrous moon, an enchanting, glimmering, shimmering, iridescent, enchanting, did I say enchanting already? Probably moon. How many have you got? 6 or 7? And they're actually, now when they go to paired talk, to talk about the moon, what are they going to say? Round. Dramatic pen drop. Yeah, they're still going to say round and white, of course, but they're now going to mirror back your ideas, iridescent, glimmering, shimmering, the enchanting, wondrous moon. Is that how you spell wondrous, Ian? Oh, life. Nightmare. I never know.
Yeah, is there an E in it? I don't know. Somebody will tell us.
Oh, God. Mrs. C's spelling bites again. Right. But the point being, the wondrous moon looked down on them. Word collector is a wonderful way that we can begin to get that sort of thesaurus thinking and combine it together so that we can instantly give language out, and the minute they can chuck it back at us, it's theirs, that sort of idea.
No E in wondrous.
Oh, no, I knew it. Oh, dear. I'll tell you what, if there's anyone who can demonstrate bad spelling live in the moment, it's me. Right. One more thing I want to do before we finish this session, and it's this sense of I've given you some thinking, but now I want to tie it together. So let's just do a little summary, okay? It goes like this. This summary, some of it is building on from things we've said yesterday, and I'm beginning to kind of draw it down. People can go back and watch session 1. Brilliant. So some of the things I want to say here are this. When we teach writing, we're always driving for sentences or sentenceness, whatever you want to call it. We make that our key commodity, the sentence. That means we're dealing in chunks of sense. That means thesaurus thinking is going to be working in the moment. That means that our word collector ideas can stretch their thinking right there. And that is really crucial. Now, something I talked about yesterday, but I haven't really talked about tonight, but we don't want to forget about it, is this other part of writing, which is really critical, which is the intent of writing. This is like really big stuff. Are we trying to build a positive sentence or a negative sentence? So if kids are really young, are we trying to feel, is it a smiley face sentence or a sad face sentence? And actually everything in between. And that is almost like the big stuff of the intent of the writing. Once we've got these key concepts on the go, it's almost then we drop into the writing rainbow, and then we go, right, I want to write a sentence. I want it to have negative intent, for example, and it's going to be one of the ideas of writing. Let's say I'm going to write a dialogue sentence. So now I can begin to show kids, look, this is a negative sentence. It's an idea of writing, and I'm going to drop in some dialogue. "Get out of here," yelled Mrs. Trunchbull. But this system here of sentence and intent then can also be applied to the grammar of writing. So I can now show kids, look, I'm going to build a sentence. It's going to have negative intent and it's going to be a really short sentence. She stomped angrily. And of course, we can then apply it, if we wanted to, down into the techniques of writing. I hope you can see me board down here when I write techniques. Can you, Mr. C? Yeah, brilliant. So it might be, now we're going to write, a sentence using alliteration. So crashing through corridors and so on. But this is crucial because this means we go back to that sort of filing cabinet of thinking that children get more worked examples to improve their writing. Now, just as a final point, I really just want to hit this home because I want you to really understand that this applies, I'm going to talk about this tonight in its broadest sense. But the concept that I'm talking about tonight is never going to go away. We're going to keep coming back to this and we're going to keep talking about it through a unit of work. And a bit later in the series, we're going to talk about it and what it means when it starts living and breathing in a lesson. But just so that we're all on the same page. So I don't want you to panic at this moment. This is almost like the big stuff that I want you to start kind of cogitating around. So if we take something like story, when you work with a story, and this is an idea I'm going to introduce now, but I am going to come back to, I want us to be thinking using almost, I suppose, the axes of maths. We need our teaching to have more precision, and we're talking very closely now about the highs and lows within a story. Now, if kids are older, these can actually have grades on them like up to +10, +1, 2, 3. But if they're young, it might be 1 smiley face, 2 smiley faces, 3 smiley faces. And down here, this is a scale of lows, like how low can you go? 3 sad faces, or if they understand negative numbers, it can be negative numbers, -10, -9. So kind of a scale of lowness. Now, why this is important, this is where we can begin to pitch the intent of writing and get more precise language. So, for example, let's just take a story that I hope you all know, something like Jack from, Jack and the Beanstalk. And our central character is Jack. Cue amazing artistic drawing. Here he is. This is Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk. Now, just for the hell of it, I'm going to imagine we are at plot point 3 in this story. And plot point 3 is when Jack shows his mum that he has sold Daisy the cow for these magic beans. Okay. Now, once we are here in this story and we want to help kids be good at writing, this is where the writing rainbow can seriously support us, because we can then start showing kids, look, this is Jack's story. This isn't going well for, well, he thought it was going well for him until he walked through the door. And now, here at this moment, we can build some sentences, and they can have negative intent, and we can push the writing through a range of lenses. So I can begin to show kids, look, we can include some negative dialogue in the story. So mum might say, oh God, she wouldn't say that. Mum might say, depending where she's from, you daft pillock, mum yelled. So we can begin to show kids, look, this has got negative intent and we're working through dialogue. But equally, we could show them something else. Look, negative intent, or it could build. We could show them, it could be a complex sentence like this. The beans, we could drop in an embedded relative clause. The beans which didn't seem to shimmer in the sunlight anymore fell to the floor. So now what we have is this sort of compartment thinking for children, so they can see not only that we're always working in sentences, but we're working under the big wings, as it were, of intent and either an idea, a grammar lens, or a technique. And just before I go, I just want you to have this sort of big idea, you know, can we apply this to non-fiction? Well, yes, of course we can as well. So for non-fiction, we're still thinking about scales of intent. Instead of the central character being driven through their plot points and us thinking about, is this a low or a high for Jack? We think about the reader. So this is the reader. And when we're working, and don't worry about this, I am going to talk about this more, but I just want you to have this as a broad idea. If we are building paragraph 3 in our non-chronological report on ancient Egyptians, for example, we can still showcase the same sort of things. So I can still say, right, we are trying to build this paragraph, and here is some dialogue from this archaeologist. The sands of Egypt hide many sinister secrets. Zahi Hawass, a Cairo archaeologist, explains. So this is really important, because what it means is kids get a flavour and many worked examples of both story and non-fiction, and what they look like and what they feel like, under the big idea from us that we have to be damn good at teaching sentences. We're either building broadly positive or negative sentences. There's more tendency in non-fiction that they can be kind of neutral, but we're aware of this, and that we are guiding kids through this sense of, look, I'm going to really help you at being so good at the ideas of writing, the grammar of writing, and the techniques of writing. Ian?
Yes.
Are there any more questions?
Yes, there are a couple.
Go on then.
So this is a question from Dale D.
Yeah.
And Dale wants to know, to get a good polished piece of writing, how long would you spend on a unit of work?
That is an excellent question. And the answer to that is, how long is a piece of string? What we're going to do later in this series, we're going to talk about building a unit of work. And the truth is, when you build a unit of work, you've got to think about it in two distinct parts. My part, I'm teaching you, I'm holding your writing hand. You've got a lot to learn as I teach you structures, language, vocabulary. That, you're like, listen up, kids, we've got a lot to do here. And another sequence that is about building independent writing. And those need to be kind of two distinct parts that are separate. So I am going to teach you a unit, and then I'm going to take you through a sequence where I provide space and generic structures for you to think within of your own ideas, so you can show me what you can do, and I don't know, I could teach postcard in 2 days and they could have a go at it in a day. I mean, not a whole day, do you know what I mean, a lesson. And I could have a story unit going on for 4 weeks and everything in between. So I've beautifully avoided that question, because I've not avoided it. It actually depends on the text type, depends on the age of your kids. And ultimately, a bit later on, we are going to talk about that in a lot of detail. Yeah. So thanks, Dale, but that's coming later. Yeah. Any others?
There's some comments.
Yeah.
Some nice comments. So this is from C. Coop.
Are they a prize winner, Mr. C?
I don't know, it's up to you. This is a bit
Shall we
creepy, but it says, as an older, inverted commas, teacher, you'll reignite my passion for teaching writing.
Oh.
I've only just discovered your work through social media. I think I've got some catching up to do.
Oh, that's lovely.
Nice.
But yeah, what we'll do, I think it'll be easier if we choose the prize person tomorrow. What I'm going to say now is these build, these interconnect, and I really don't want them kind of going on for longer than half an hour or 45 minutes, somewhere about there, because we've got some Netflix series to catch up in, and if they get too heavy, I think I won't see you. I think we go for small and beautiful and often. So, and there's only so much we can take on anyway. I've loved having you here. I want to say hashtag heartburst, but I don't think that's the hashtag, that's just how I feel. But hashtag the right stuff sessions. Show me what you're wearing. Don't quote me out of context. And actually, you have to do this sort of thing. You have, as a YouTuber, subscribe, click me bell, because then you'll know when I'm on here, doing all sorts of stuff. Thank you, everybody. Stay in touch. And I love this little teacher family we're growing. And I'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you.